Okay.
The night in Nassau Coliseum is the night that I got hurt. I had actually wrestled my first match there, was against Dr. Tom Pritchard for the WWE, and he wore a mask and got my first win there actually. Then the night I got hurt was also Nassau Coliseum. Actually, I was supposed to wrestle on Raw the night before, and what happened was we did a pre-shoot. I was in the locker room, and D'Lo Brown and I have been having a little bit of a feud. Kind of looked around, found his bag, checked, made sure nobody was coming in, opened it up, leaned over, puked in his bag, and zipped it back up and left. And it ended up showing on the screen that night on Raw because we were supposed to wrestle later that night. And it turned out it was about 10, a little after 10, we were up in the gorilla position, is where everybody goes to get ready, before you go out for your match. And some of the matches had run long, and of course Raw was live. So we ended up getting bumped that night. Said, okay, we'll move it to tomorrow night. Okay, that's fine. And so, I was all ready to go. I knew I was going to do some speaking on the mic and things like that. So I was like, okay, I get another night. Tuesday night, we ended up, in Nassau Coliseum, doing taping SmackDown. I found that, I knew I was going to be doing some speaking, coming out. I was basically talking smack on D'Lo. I was pointing up at the screen. They were going to re-show me throwing up, puking in his bag. And, I was just cutting a promo on him and the people in New York. And I came out, that night I came out, I cut the promo. I got up, got up in the ring, still talking. I remember D'Lo came running out. Boom, he hit the ropes. We did a couple moves. And then finally, I ended up putting him in a corner, I remember. I went and came running into the corner. I remember he kicked me in the stomach. And two things that I look back on that were, just minor things at the time, but I always wrestle with my nipple, all my piercings, tongue, nose, ears, nipple, always wrestle with all my rings in. And that night, for some reason, I took my nipple ring out. Didn't think, it wasn't any big deal. And I also wore a baggy shirt that I'd never worn before. It was like a holy black, like sweatshirt almost. And anyway, so we go through and he ends up kicking me in the stomach. He was going to give me a running powerbomb, which he had done before. We had wrestled a bunch of matches before. And then with that, he picked me up, and I remember going up and I knew something wasn't right. And it just felt weird. I didn't go all the way up, and I just remember him moving, and I just remember going down, and I still remember hitting, and I heard two cracks. And I went, oh, well, I basically said, oh fuck, I just broke my neck. And, I was in shock, of course, and I'm like, wow, and just thoughts are going through my mind. I knew I was in trouble. The ref came over, Teddy Long actually came over. He said, Droz, you okay? I said, Teddy, I just broke my neck. And of course, they stopped it there. I remember Matt Albert kind of coming in, and I'm talking. I remember everything about it. I remember people coming in, talking to me. I was just like, take your time, do your thing. I knew I was screwed. I knew I was paralyzed. I knew it was. I heard crack, crack, and I knew right there. That's when I said that. And I knew that I was paralyzed, and I couldn't move anything. My head was to the side, and actually, little side note on that is when wrestling came, when I was in the hospital, or just when I think I was still in the hospital when I was getting out of the hospital, wrestling had come back to Philly, and one of the papers up there, it was the day after Walter Payton had died, and instead of having something about him on the cover, they actually had wrestling's in town, such and such, and they had a picture of me laying in the ring, paralyzed, and I'm like, I was like, what's going on here, this guy just died, and there's a picture of me laying there, paralyzed in the ring, and I saw how I was laying, and my arms were back, and my head was to the side, and I didn't know exactly how I was positioned because, I couldn't see, but, so anyway, I was laying there, and I'm talking to guys, and they're getting the neck brace on me and everything like that, and, I knew my fiance was in the back, and she worked for the company, and, I was just thinking, she just saw this, everybody saw this on, backstage, watching on camera. And they were taking me out, I remember talking to the boys, and, they're just wishing me the best and things like that, and seeing her, and, then going to, luckily there was it's like a trauma center within 5-10 minutes of Nassau Coliseum, and in a way I was lucky because, if I would have been in some backwater town, who knows, what, if it could have been any worse. It was pretty bad to begin with, but stayed there 5 or 10 minutes away. They got me there. I remember going in and being there, and I remember them asking, about my tongue ring. How did I had to tell them, like, look, you just gotta kind of grab my tongue and unscrew the bottom and things like that. And they were talking to me, and I remember looking at the clock, and I got hurt on October 5th of 1999, and October 6th was my fiance's birthday. She was set to go home and all that stuff. I remember laying there, and I looked at the clock, and it said like 12:15. And I was like, it's my fiance's birthday. And I don't know where it just came out. I remember saying it to the doctors. And then after that, with everything that was going on, I guess, they were drugging me up and things like that. And after that, I don't remember much I remember bits and pieces of being in the trauma center and things like that. But it was a while before I was really lucid. It took close to, I can't even really remember, probably 4, 5, 6, 7 days, I don't even know, to really figure out what was going on. Knowing for sure, I was paralyzed then.
Now, you, like you said before, you had no idea what went wrong. It just
something
was just off.
It just something just felt off, and and I talked to D'Lo about it. We talked to it after it, right after, and times after that, and it was something. I just wasn't. I don't know. I didn't go up all the way. Like I said, I had a baggy shirt on. I might have slipped down a little bit. I just know, and then, I remember reading some stories that somebody threw something in the ring and he slipped on it, and, things like that. And, of course people aren't going to know this will let people know exactly. I talked to WWE a little before, what happened, but, some people had heard that I slipped on something, things like that, but no, it just happened. It was, I remember I said before when I broke one of the DOA brothers' nose, things happen in the ring, and I knew things like that could happen, and Owen had passed away. Owen Hart had actually passed away 6 months before in an accident, and that was a real tough time for everybody. And then having that happen, and it just something went wrong. Whether I slipped down, whatever it was, it was just something that happened in the ring. It wasn't anybody's fault, and still this day I feel that way. That it happened. That's how it is.
Let me ask you that the initial paralysis that you had, that you had no movement whatsoever except moving your head. Is that?
I could move my head, and really my arms. I guess because of the initial shock, I don't believe I was able to really move them at the time. I mean, it was just, I guess, the shock to my body really is what,
Was that for an extended amount of time that you had no movement at all?
No. I actually once, I guess, I was in the trauma center for I think 10 to 14 days. Then they flew me to, into Philadelphia, McGee Rehab Center. And there I was able to move my, I was moving my arms, but, it just, I guess, from the shock on the spinal cord, things like that, I wasn't able to move them as much. But then as time came on, I'm able to move them a lot. I have no feeling in my hands. No use of my hands actually. I'm paralyzed from the chest down. I can use my arms, shoulders. I can move around, things like that. And I'm able to do things. I'm still able to do things with the injury. Work on a computer and things like that, type. And but yeah, I just like I said, it took a little while for me to be able to get the arms moving.
And the legs is not.
No, the legs. There's no feeling whatsoever. And that, and that's one good thing. With science these days, you never know what's going to happen. So you just wait and see, basically. And you make the best of your life. I mean, that's what I've done. That's what I do.
So basically the condition you're in now, you've been basically that way since...
Yeah,
No improvement, no getting worse?
Maybe with my arms, maybe I'd gotten maybe a little improvement, but, it's basically pretty much been the same since I got hurt, yes.
And you just thank God for your life.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, that's, and there's... I could be worse off. I could be paralyzed from where I couldn't use my arms at all. And I say to myself, wow, if I could use my hands, that would be great. But I can't. But I can still do things with my hands, turn on lights. Like I said, I can type on the computer. I can, you know, I can still fish. There's adaptive equipment, and I thank God that I can use my hands still. You know that, or use my arms at least, and you take it for what it is, and you take it day by day, and you live your life.
Do you ever get frustrated that, like, I guess getting into bed, getting out of bed,
Right.
dressed, going to the bathroom?
Yeah, I mean, it's all part of, you learn, in the beginning, of course, it's really rough, trying to learn that stuff. And a funny thing happened, I used to, when I first got to McGee, I always thought that I had clothes on. I was like, I got to get my clothes off. And I was like, I'm like, look, just, humor me and take my, flannel off, because I was always wearing cut-off flannels and things like that. But, it's getting used to the stuff, being able to do everything for yourself, and then all of a sudden you can't hardly do anything for yourself, is a shock. And getting used to having people dress you, undress you, doing all different things, it's a shock to you. But you get to the point where that's your life and that's what you have to do, and it's just like a daily routine. You get accustomed to it. It's part of your life now. It's part of what you have to do.
I mean, you have a staff here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I would assume. But I guess you don't even call them staff. I guess you just call them family, right?
They really are. I mean, people say, ask sometimes, they'll be like, it's an aide or a nurse. But yeah, they've been, the group that's with me now has been with me for a while, and they are. I mean, they're great. They're great friends. I mean, that's what I consider them. I mean, they work for me, but they're still great friends.
Speaking of friends, you and D'Lo, how did he feel?
I mean, he felt horrible. I mean, I'm sure it was in his mind. Maybe he wanted to blame himself. But as I said, after it happened, he's apologizing, and we talked, and he still apologized. I said, look, man, I said, it's something that happened. I said, it could have happened to anybody. It happened to us. There's nothing that you did wrong, nothing I did. It's just something that happened. And I'm sure it was hard. I'm sure his next bunch of matches were probably pretty weird for him. But I never had any hard feelings or ill will, because I knew the consequences and other things that happened throughout my career. I mean, I had ribs broken, concussions, hit with chairs, split open, things. Nothing to this magnitude, but it's something that happened in the ring, and it's part of it. People talk about wrestling being really dangerous, and I mean, anything's dangerous. I look at it this way. I could have, tripped on a curb. There was a person when I was in McGee who had tripped on a curb and fell and broke their neck, and they were paralyzed, or fall off a little footstool or something like that. I mean, it could have happened anyway. I mean, yeah, it's probably a lot easier. It's probably a lot easier to happen in a wrestling ring, but it happens. Things happen all the time, and you make the best of them and you deal with it.